in the world did Garfield get so popular? It's hard to imagine that Jim Davis's little comic strip from 1978 became this massive global media empire that generates $1 billion every year. A humble comedy strip where the main punchline was "cat is fat, haha." Or perhaps, if you're an English professor, a brief dissection on society's view on animal sentience and how we treat them as domesticated pets that share the same mind. But probably not, considering 40 years later, the punchline remains "cat, fat, and lazy, haha."
No thanks, I'm full.
Regardless on how you feel about the character and comic, there's pretty much no chance you haven't heard about it. Even though the newspaper and newspaper comic strip have been disappearing with time, Garfield is omnipresent. With his status as a meme in 2020, it's pretty much guaranteed that this apolitical, lazy orange cat will be around for decades to come, but not without creating an amalgamation of unholy media in his wake. Garfield's status as a cultural icon has baffled me, but his impact on capitalism has left me even more confused. One look at the eBay's Garfield Twitter account, rest in peace, will showcase nearly 40 years of absurd, freaky, unreal merchandise, some bootlegged, some real, and all of it entertaining. His popularity can only be likened to something like the Minion, slightly cute thing, animated, easily inserted into any situation. He hates Mondays. Man, I hate Mondays. Oh my god, how relatable. Surprisingly, the generation that actually grew up with Garfield decided to adopt the Minion as the Facebook meme, so Garfield's kind of resurfaced as this existential thing. Now everyone wants to party with Garfield and Friends, even if half of them are like horrifying Lovecraftian looking things. Truly, Garfield is eternal, John. So yo, it's Austin, and today we're going to be diving into the video game world of everyone's favorite lasagna devouring cat, Garfield and Friends. Maybe one day I'll talk about the show itself, but for now, I really don't want to. It's also not a show, it's like a comic, it's like a world. I don't know, what is Garfield? But for now, let's dive into the never-ending hellscape known as Garfield Video Games. Our journey begins in the 1980s. The orange feline's been around in video games nearly as long as video games themselves. He lazily rolled out onto the Apple II around the same time as Oregon Trail during that mid-80s educational game boom. Kids gotta learn, kids like Garfield, let's eat our words with Garfield. Or Garfield Double Dares. I don't know what that means. Not much to say here, you type words out. Both of these games look basically the same. His early origins are pretty much these low-budget nothing games. The same with Create with Garfield. You come home and you find out you just paid $20 to move Garfield and John stickers around. At least you can make them say whatever you want. There's a bunch of these abandonware educational games that came out over the years that aren't really worth talking about, but then one dropped that was a big fat hairy deal. That's what it's called. Garfield Big Fat Hairy Deal was developed by The Edge, a now defunct game developer who made old PC games back in the day like this or Snoopy, the cool computer game. They made 2 Garf games, both of which are extremely cursed. Hairy Deal is an adventure game where you gotta go rescue Arlene, Garfield's girlfriend, I guess? I never really understood why Jimothy Davis gave her these big old puckery lips. Side note, you ever notice how all these cats are able to communicate telepathically and without any movement at all, with the same panel copy-pasted 3 times? Come on, Jim. It's pretty simple. You save Arlene and you get yourself a big old whatever the heck this is. But not before finding yourself in a massive dungeon right underneath John's house that fades entirely to darkness. What is this? I just love cherry pie, Garfield says as a rat starts strafing. There's also their other game, Garfield Winter's Tale, also on the PC. Let's see if this one fares any better. Maybe not. This is just a bad minigame collection with terrible slowdown and old PC platforming. And a stretch button for some reason. He's trying his best. What about A Week of Garfield, the Japanese exclusive Famicom game that never made it to the States, even though it was based on an American franchise and all of the text was in English already? Psst, you'll be hearing this a lot today. A Week of Garfield is like a fever dream. It's 7 days with Garfield through some of the most terrible NES era platforming you can imagine, topped off with what has to be the best sprites in the biz. Now I know Garfield has a few iconic poses like his tongue out screaming, but I don't think this is right. His body changes sizes between animation. Anytime he jumps, his eyes look directly at the camera, directly at you, the player, saying, "What's wrong with you?" And he looks more like a bean here. And whenever you crouch, his body mass decreases by like 50%. And let's not forget his attack animation. Why does the foot shrink? Also, you got no iframes, so if you just like walk into an enemy who's also walking forward, it'll just kill you. So yeah, Spad game. After all those games in 1989, we wouldn't see another Garfield video game for another 6 years in 1995, which was well after the primetime Garfield and Friends resurgence. So, I don't know what that was about. I guess the Garfield and Friends cartoon was all they needed at the time, because the only game-worthy thing to release in the meantime were a Tiger Electronics handheld and an absurd Game Boy conversion called Garfield Labyrinth, also known as the real Ghostbusters, also known as Mickey Mouse 4. What? Well, some of y'all know about the Japanese Crazy Castle series that was relatively popular on the Game Boy, but for some reason, anytime a game would be released, it would get an American version, or in this case, a European conversion. In the past, it would be like Roger Rabbit becomes Bugs Bunny, or Mickey Mouse becomes Kid Clown. But for no good reason, Mickey Mouse became the real Ghostbusters in the States and Garfield Labyrinth in the PAL region. Number 2 on our Garfield games to not make it over here, by the way. This is a pretty simple puzzle platformer. The only important thing to take away from this is that they decided not to change the ending of the Mickey Mouse game. Imagine the romantic pairing of Mickey and Minnie Mouse getting back together after a long journey, except it's Garfield and Odie. Oh my god. My point being, it doesn't count. I want that 100% GMO-free Garfield video game life, not this ROM hack nonsense. God damn it, my hair's too long. COVID, come on, stay inside, wear a mask. More importantly, at this point in the video, you're probably sitting there asking, why in the world did you want to cover Garfield games in the first place? And it's mainly because I wanted to talk about this childhood video game that I had that I thought was pretty decent. Garfield Caught in the Act for the Sega Genesis. It's weird to think that the first really obtainable Western Garfield video game came out nearly 20 years after the comic started, but here we are. Garfield Caught in the Act wasn't just a licensed game. It wasn't just a Genesis exclusive. It was developed in-house by a studio they bought out, Sega Interactive, also known as Interactive Designs. It would also be their last game. Whoops. That's a shame though, because it's actually pretty alright, especially for licensed and Garfield standards, which isn't really saying anything, I guess. The story is pretty simple. It's basically Garfield art online. He's watching TV when it gets busted, so he fixes her up and immediately gets sucked into it, giving us multiple worlds of adventure. It's the most standard plot for your theme park variety action platformers of the day, but this particular frame of Garfield getting sucked into the TV scared the shit out of me as a kid. It's so much more detailed and horrifying than Garfield. This looks like it belongs in X-Men instead. It's closer to the I want lasagna, John memes of today than your 3-panel, haha, lasagna. The game itself is like a solid 6.5 out of 10. It's got a lot of character and fun animations, which is pretty rare for anything involving this little orange creature, but there's certainly better 2D platformers you could be playing. It's lacking that blast processing that made Genesis games have their signature speed and chaos, but also lacking the fun of a slower game like Earthworm Jim. It's got variety with the whack-a-mole sections, the side-scrolling item collections, and the worlds are vastly different enough that it'll keep your attention, but I mean, just go play Rocket Knight. Just go do that. Rocket Knight Adventures. Still not ported. What's up with that? Weirdly enough, Garfield Caught in the Act has a small expansion called The Lost Levels that was exclusive to the Sega channel. That's one of 14, by the way. Most of these have been ported to other consoles or collections, but the Lost Levels remain lost. Caught in the Act and the Lost Levels were one of Sega of America's biggest projects at the time, but the 32X version of the game got canceled. You can see these Lost Levels in the Game Gear version, but that's pretty much it for Sega's Tango with the Tabby. Well, unless you count the Sega PC Sonic and Garfield pack, 3 big games, 1 enormous action pack. Wait, the third game's Baku Baku? What the heck? Rest in peace, Sega Interactive. I didn't really know you very well, or at all, really. I don't think I've played any of your games, but I will say thanks for Green Dog, the Beached Surfer Dude. Everyone remembers that, right? If I told you that we already reached the top, the very peak of Garfield video games, would you believe me? For the next few years, Garfield video games were regulated to little CD racks in the shelf bookends at Walmart, or a book fair in the case of Scholastic's comic book maker featuring Garfield. Garfield's Mad About Cats. It's a game about learning about different types of cats. Garfield's Typing Pal. What do you think this is about? The next big Garfield video game release would be Garfield for the PlayStation 2, and it didn't make it to the States. Well, not until a year later on the PC. Apparently, I can't for the life of me find a copy of this on eBay or anywhere I search, so I'm not even sure if it really exists, but I played it, and good God.
I'm very angry with you. You've eaten my carefully prepared lasagna. I will put you on a diet. I really mean it this time, Garfield. Gee, I hate seeing John upset like that. Just kidding.
You know, there's 2 video games where you control a character who uses a handy vac as their primary tool, but Luigi's Mansion this ain't. Garfield 2004 is what I'm gonna be calling it, is a game about cleaning up your dog's bullshit and putting everything back in order before John gets home so you don't have to go on a diet. That's the entire game. Just 2.5 hours of running back and forth, scooping up items, and then placing them somewhere else. All while not Lorenzo Music says one-liners to you over...
Things I do for stardom.
And over...
I hate Mondays.
And over...
Don't worry. Be stupid.
For some reason, the main and only mechanic in this game, the vacuum, has a terrible hitbox. I've been trying to vacuum up this stupid picture for like 5 minutes and no angle works. I can't get it to suck up. I can't. Why you would make the literal one gameplay mechanic in your game so finicky is beyond me. But I guess that explains why this didn't come out over here. Also, it sucks. Next. Garfield's first foray into the third dimension wasn't very good, but hey, at least he made it into the 2000s. Moving forward, from 2005 to 2009, Garfield would get 9 video games. That's right, 9. Be it on the Game Boy Advance or the DS. If you searched the deepest of bargain bins, you knew you could find yourself a Garfield video game. But the burning question remains, if it was good or not. It's not. Starting on the Game Boy Advance, we've got The Search for Pookie and Garfield and His 9 Lives. One of these is okay. This period of Garfield video games were ruled over by the Game Factory, a Danish publisher that was responsible for bringing us Cartoon Network Racing, which isn't a great sign, but The Search for Pookie would be the first one they released. We open with Garfield having a little catnap when a trio of robbers break in and take the teddy bear, that's it. But they're mice, so I guess they're just mad. You'd think they would be a rat, considering mice are like 3 inches long and probably don't possess the strength to move a teddy bear, but that's fine, whatever. Let's get our bear back. Oh wait, does that say 434? Oh god. Every level in The Search for Pookie is divided into 3 sections with one goal. Collect specific items and bring it to the specific drop-off point. Just like Garfield 2004, except in this game you have to platform left to right, typically backtracking 3 times. You can only hold one of the objectives at a time, so you gotta go back and forth, move on to the next level, and do it again, all while collecting whatever food the cow wants to eat. Also yeah, that's over 400 collectibles for 1 level. How much food does this thing need? He's gonna die. And that's the entire game. Just repeat that for like 4 hours. Or you can flip over to the other one, Garfield and His 9 Lives. Well, for starters, we've got a few more frames of animation here and not whatever that was. 9 Lives feels like your standard Super Nintendo era platformer, and that's to its credit. I don't expect much from Garfield. Your only goal's still the same, collecting whatever items you need to reach the end of the level. You're equipped with a shoulder charge and a kick, so it's definitely one of the better feeling Garfield games. Things actually like feel not awful. For some reason, if you hold down while in midair, Garfield does a flying elbow drop, which doesn't do any damage though, so I guess somebody just wanted to animate that.
I am the cream!
But whoever made the decision to start you with any amount of lives that is not 9 needs to be fired. A lot of Garfield games from this era are pretty much just the same thing. They're either a mediocre platformer or a mediocre collection of mini games with really nothing special going on. There's Garfield Nightmare, which is probably the most generic video game I've ever played. It's got really nothing going on except for the fact that whenever you crawl, he doesn't like do a cat thing. There's also Garfield Saving Arlene, which is a PlayStation 2 game the US never got. That makes 4. It's kind of the predecessor to another game we did get, but we'll come back to that later. So push that out of the way. But one we did get on the PC anyways was a game based off the hot sequel to the hot 2004 movie. Garfield, A Tale of Two Kitties, the video game. More like Tale of Two or as it was known everywhere else, Garfield 2. I think about how Bill Murray accidentally signed on to voice the first movie thinking it was a Coen brother movie quite a bit, but apparently he was fine with it because he decided to do the sequel. The decision to make Garfield look the way he does and have every other animal in both of these films look just normal, was a really strange one. He looks like an orange jelly bean running around with real animals. I don't know what was up with the mid-2000s and the cursed 3D reboots of older franchises like this, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Scooby-Doo, and the Smurfs, but clearly someone thought these were good ideas. Even though this movie was critically destroyed, it still pulled a profit. I definitely contributed to that. Sorry guys, I was 14, I should have known better. So what's this one about? Garfield and John, played by Breckin Meyer, who is not in this game, go to the UK. What's up with Garfield in Europe? Y'all getting game exclusivity and now personal visits? Some bullshit. The game itself is actually okay. It's just kind of freaking weird. I guess they shoved a ton of language options into the mix because the dialogue speed ranges here from like slow Garfield talking to gotta go fast because we're running out of data on the disc.
Press X twice to do a double jump. It's easy. Odie will show you. He does a double jump and at the exact moment.
This follows the same trend that Garfield 2004 did, where the console version didn't make it to the States, but the PC version did. I don't know why he keeps skipping the PlayStation here. I'm not really sure that the market who would purchase a Garfield trademark video game is the PC market in 2006, but what can you do? We were more worried about Bioshock and how many times you can install it. Did they ever fix that? It's a pretty run-of-the-mill platformer with some weird physics. It actually reminds me a lot of Jak and Daxter in Mario 64. The castle that he takes control over is like a hub world, and there's a bunch of objectives you do in the smaller levels. This includes flying around, running in circles, taking control of a mouse, and trying to make yourself vomit by spinning around like this. What is this attack? How do you beat this? There's also a dancing minigame. Hatsune Miku, get out. Yeah, it sucks. Next. Before we move on, I need you all to pull out your phone, and subscribe by the way, and I need you to type in whatever app store that you have, Garfield. Do it. I'll wait. Ever since the birth of the modern free-to-play game app era, you pretty much expect literally every franchise to have some sort of thing. If you ever wanted to play the Thomas and Friends Gacha Runner, well, wait, what? I'll sit patiently waiting for the Wild Arms Gacha game to get translated, which it won't, but until then, it's good to know that we can relax with the literal endless amount of Garfield mobile games. First up, Garfield Rush. Ever play Temple Run? Well, now you can play the hit free-to-play endless runner with Garfield. What about Garfield Run Road Tour? It's also Temple Run, except this one doesn't want to start for me. Garfield's just running in place forever. Garfield, simply Garfield, or a Garfield living large, I guess. Someone decided to turn the fat cat into a Tamagotchi type of thing. He wants ball, you give him ball. He smells like crap, you give him a bath. Why does this exist? Garfield Bingo. I can imagine my parents playing this for like 3 hours a day while also bugging me about it on Facebook. Garfield Chef. It's a match 3. What can I say? Garfield Snack Time. It's also match 3, although this one's a little closer to Tsum Tsum Clone. Not much to say here. Garfield Smog Buster. This one's an auto-scroller shooter where for some reason the orange cat is given a future space vehicle with laser guns. Is this supposed to be Garfield fighting a virus pandemic? I'm not sure, but this has to be the ugliest menu I've seen in a while. Garfield My Big Fat Diet. This is a stealth action game. You're on a diet, but you're an asshole who's gonna sneak food anyways. It's fine, it's a mobile game, but why is it that every single one of these is asking for my age? I feel like these Garfield games are closer to data collection tools than games. They want access to my camera, my gallery, my location. He just needs it for the hit game, Garfield Go. That's right, everyone, I braved the outside to play Garfield Go for all of you. I'm sure everyone watching knows of Pokemon Go, the hit mobile game that encouraged walking around. Well, with Garfield Go, you do the same thing. Except instead of catching creatures, you're on the eternal treasure hunt to find food and comic strips. That's right, I got me a rare Garfield panel, but not before having to go into my phone settings and manually enable GPS because the app didn't ask for permission. It kinda just sat on this screen forever. Whenever you find a coin on your map, the camera turns on and it switches to AR mode because you have to spin around to find Garfield. Once you do, you have to give him food to eat and then find him again to open a treasure. It's very cursed. There's big carnival tents, which I thought were gonna be Garfield raid towers, but no, they're just crappy mini games. But hey, at least we can unlock hats. I like how he doesn't even walk on the map when you're moving. What a gem. All of these are just what I found on the Google Play Store. I'm sure if you search the others, there's more, and I'm sure if you include Flash games on the browsers on the internet, then it's just gonna be this endless cursed world of Garfield things, and that's too much for this one video. But there are a couple other console games we haven't touched, and kart racing Garfield Kart and Garfield Kart Furious Racing are about what you'd expect. Terrible kart racing games where the audio is so borked you can't even hear the music over the engines revving. But I already talked about those. Then there's games like Garfield Gets Real, Garfield's Fun Fest, and the Garfield Show Threat of Space Lasagna. These all blend together with earlier games of being like run-of-the-mill 4 or 5 out of 10 platformers or minigame collections. You know, the bottom tier licensed dreck of the late aughts. Everyone's favorite. The last game that I'm going to be talking about today is probably the worst one. It's the one that could have been decent, the one that had like a lot going for it. It was a sequel. It was a game on the PlayStation 2. It actually made it into the United States, but they did Garfield Lasagna World Tour. Garfield Lasagna World Tour doesn't make sense. It was a PlayStation 2 game that released in 2007, 2 years into the next generation, and it came out at only $15. It's the sequel to a game that never even hit the States. They could have learned, but instead, we got one of the premier examples of a cursed licensed game. Let me explain. The game opens with Garfield breaking up with a cake before learning about a worldwide lasagna treasure hunt. Then Garf and Odie team up and leave the house together. Where is John? Where is an adult? How did they open the front door? But most importantly, who is this evil Garfield? They're doing the evil clone thing all the way to the eye patch. It's brilliant.
Forget it and follow me.
Lasagna World Tour is an action, use that word lightly, puzzle platformer that showed a lot of promise. You mainly control Garfield, but have the ability to summon Odie from the heavens to do your bidding. The entire game is presented with a comic book-like frame around it and will split into different camera angles for puzzle solving. Let's say there's a switch you gotta hit by kicking Odie into it. It'll show your angle, and with this, it's immediately more accessible than a lot of the platformers from the era where you just have to guess. It's just terrible though. Garfield has several different outfits and abilities he can get, most of them awful stereotypes. Nice going, Jim.
And that's Garfield.
There's Cowboy Garfield, which gives you access to a pop gun. Soccer Garfield, which gives you the ability to punt the ever-living crap out of that dog. In fact, in order to use Odie at all and progress, you're pretty much just abusing the poor thing. You're standing on his head as he floats in the water with his mouth wide open. That's not how it works. There's also Turban Garfield, where he gets the ability to hover for long distances. When you do it, it plays a little... that's no good. What about the level choice? We've got John's neighborhood immediately into an ancient Egyptian temple. There's also a trip to Italy. The music here is so stereotypical that I'm surprised it didn't just play the Spider-Man 2 pizza theme. Don't forget about Mexico, or as they're calling it, Mexican City. Wow. This game just smells like budget all over. The amount of stock sound effects here are unreal. When you fire a shot as Cowboy Garfield, it sounds identical to the reload sound effect in GoldenEye. It's also extremely easy to reproduce glitches. If you take fall damage and keep moving, Garfield's walking animation just stops without fail every time. But I think the worst part about this is how much of a slog it feels like. You're pretty much just doing really mindless, time-consuming puzzles over and over. And since there's no discernible actual combat in this game, you're basically doing the exact same thing over and over for eternity. Nothing happens in this game. Okay, I lied. There's a little bit of combat. Beyond that, it's just like kick an enemy to stun them. It'll probably miss and you'll take damage, but you know, combat. You get to control just Odie for a segment where actually it's just Garfield and Odie switching bodies, don't worry about it. And then there's a few run towards the screen levels as well. Like the minigame in Mickey Mania, but somehow worse. That's saying something. It's hard to explain how awful this feels. Anytime there's a tight ledge, I don't know if Garfield's gonna grab onto it or just drop because of how finicky it is. You have a bunch of abilities mapped to the same button, even though multiple triggers are not used at all. And sometimes you have to do some extremely precise platforming, and it's very unforgiving. Lasagna World Tour is just the worst. I don't care if this orange cat gets his lifetime supply of lasagna. I don't even care about Solidus Garfield. I'm out. Well, I mean, there's only one level left, so maybe I can...
Behold Venice, the city of lovers. Don't even think about it.
Stop! I decided to buy the domain for GarfieldPorn.com in the middle of doing research for this video, so you can check that out if you want after this. Garfield Lasagna World Tour. I want to die. I feel like, even though this is the end of the video and I've covered every major video game release, that this is the tip of the iceberg. I feel like things are gonna speed up now that apparently anyone can just buy the rights to Garfield. Maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll make some Garfield. Maybe I'll make some Garfield merchandise. Why not? it. You know, I originally wanted to do this video because of this little monstrosity right here and the fact that I got a kitty recently. His name is Vivi. He's very cute. He also doesn't like me yet. Cats take time. They take time. Doing this video made me maybe want to return to Garfield in the future because there's just, like, what is it? What? I don't get it. But for now, I need to get rid of this thing right here. Otherwise, my girlfriend's going to kill me. Okay, bye.
Where's my lasagna, John?
Garfield and Friends.
Special Patreon shout out to Brandon Howell, Chris Shelton, Christopher Olivia, Cliff Pro, Donald Dowdy, David Molnar, Eli Shane Stauffenecker, Flaming Fighter, Aimee, Jay Roos, Jeffrey Narvaez, Jacoby Fitzpatrick, Jordy McCaffrey, Josh Garbage Lord, Kevin Zanowski, Kieran Arter, Legend Gary, Nitron, and Plasma Phoenix. Thank you very much for your generous support. Quick announcement, I'm going to be doing a big charity stream in favor of Equality Now on Saturday the 18th, so that's a week and a half from today. Next Saturday. I'll be announcing more details about the stream the next coming days on my social media channels, so make sure to follow us there. So stay tuned for that, and I'm gonna have a big sleep. Okay, goodbye.